The night was heavy with rain, and Michael said, "You think my pain is a joke, don't you, Richard?" His voice trembled, but anger burned in his eyes. Richard laughed, the cruel sound echoing through the alley. Michael clenched his fists, each drop of rain mixing with his shame. Richard said, "You'll never rise from the dirt, Michael." Michael lowered his gaze, his chest heaving, memories of every hardship flooding his mind. The streetlights flickered, painting his soaked figure in pale gold. Richard leaned closer, mocking, his breath reeking of arrogance. Michael said, "I'll remember this night, Richard." His voice was raw, a mixture of grief and fury. Richard walked away, laughter cutting through the storm. Michael collapsed to his knees, whispering to himself, "This isn't the end." His words carried more weight than the storm, echoing a promise the world would soon regret. Michael walked the empty streets, soaked to the bone, whispering, "He thinks I am nothing." Each word was a wound, each step heavy with shame. His mind replayed Richard's laughter, sharp as broken glass. Michael clenched his jaw, the storm outside no match for the storm within. Memories of childhood struggles clawed at him, the endless humiliation, the nights of hunger. He had been mocked all his life, and now Richard's cruelty had broken something inside him. Michael said, "No more running." His voice cracked but held steel. A plan was forming, dark and dangerous, one that would shift the balance of power. Michael returned to his dim apartment, dripping water across the cracked floor. He whispered, "I'll rise." Shadows danced on peeling walls as thunder rolled outside. He sat at the edge of his bed, hands trembling, face hardened. His eyes locked on an old photograph of happier days, memories of what he lost fueling his anger. Michael said, "I'll take back everything." The storm rattled the window, lightning flashing across his determined face. His life of defeat was ending tonight. Richard sat in his luxury office, whiskey in hand, smirking at his reflection in glass walls. He said, "Pathetic fool will never touch me." His arrogance filled the room as rain lashed against the windows. He leaned back in leather chair, basking in his own power. A phone buzzed with new deals, new conquests. Richard said, "I own this city." But the storm outside rumbled, as if mocking him. Michael stood before the mirror, water dripping from his hair, staring at his own reflection with unblinking fury. He said, "Tonight was the last time I bowed." His eyes narrowed. The man who entered that alley was gone. He whispered, "The reckoning begins." His voice carried a cold certainty. The storm outside roared, as if answering his vow. Michael sat in the corner of his dark apartment, the storm having passed, leaving only silence heavy as chains. He whispered, "I've been broken too many times." His eyes searched the cracked ceiling, memories flooding like ghosts. Hunger, humiliation, betrayal, every scar written into his bones. His voice shook. Richard was just the last straw. The night pressed against his walls, suffocating yet pushing him forward. He thought of his mother's struggles, the years of going without. He thought of the jobs stolen, the laughter of those who watched him fail. Michael said, "I've lived as prey long enough." His fists tightened, his shoulders squared, his breath steadying. Shadows seemed to lean closer, whispering vengeance. He said, "This pain is the weapon I never knew I had." His chest rose, as though awakening, his heart burning hotter than the storm outside. Richard celebrated in his office, neon city lights painting him in cold fire. He lifted his glass, saying, "Here's to victory." His smirk was sharp, pride dripping from every gesture. He reveled in Michael's collapse, savoring cruelty as though it were wine. The rain had ended, but the storm inside his arrogance still raged. Richard said, "Nothing stands in my way." He laughed, pouring another drink, confidence swelling like a poisoned tide. Papers of his empire lay across the desk, deals signed with other people's suffering. He leaned back, whispering, "The world bends to me." But thunder echoed in the distance, like a warning he couldn't hear. Michael walked through the neighborhood where he grew up, cracked pavements whispering of every struggle. he muttered. This is where he laughed at me first. His eyes trailed over graffiti-marked walls, old playgrounds where laughter once healed wounds. Instead, the memories cut sharper than knives. Children's voices echoed in his head, mocking the poor boy who never had enough. Michael said, I survived them all, and I'll survive him. His jaw locked, chest heavy with rage and promise. The wind carried a bitter chill, and every step tightened the chain of his resolve. He touched the broken swings, remembering, then turned away with fire in his eyes. In a quiet diner, lit by a flickering neon sign, Michael met Sarah, his childhood friend. Sarah, 31-year-old female, leaned across the table, concern etched into her face. She said, You're changing, Michael. He looked into her eyes, heavy with warning and care. Michael said, I can't stay broken, Sarah, not anymore. Her hands trembled as she said, But revenge will eat you alive. He clenched his jaw, whispering, It's already eating me. Sarah lowered her gaze, her silence carrying fear and loyalty in equal measure. Michael left the diner, rain beginning again, faint drizzle shimmering under streetlights. Sarah's words echoed, but his mind was unshaken. He said, No warning will stop me now. His shoes splashed through puddles as determination cut deeper into his veins. He passed strangers who never saw him, a ghost rising among the living. The city loomed above, indifferent and merciless. He muttered, Richard will know what fear feels like. His voice was steady, almost cold. The night stretched before him, endless, but this time he didn't feel lost. He felt born again, reborn from scars, into a man carrying fire. Michael walked through the abandoned train yard, the rusted tracks echoing with his steps. He muttered, This city forgot me, but I will remind it I exist. Shadows stretched long, and the night air smelled of iron and oil. A figure stepped from the darkness, an older man with weathered eyes. Thomas, 58-year-old male, said, You walk a dangerous path, Michael. Michael froze, fists tightening, but curiosity overpowered fear. Michael said, Who are you to warn me? Thomas sighed, his voice heavy with experience, someone who knows what vengeance costs. Michael's chest burned, but his gaze never faltered. He whispered, Then teach me to survive it. The silence between them carried both warning and promise, a moment where Michael's future shifted. Thomas lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his scarred face. He said, I once stood where you stand now. Michael studied him, sensing a painful history in his eyes. Thomas exhaled smoke, whispering, Revenge feels righteous, but it leaves only ashes. Michael clenched his jaw and said, Richard laughed at my suffering. I can't let that go. Thomas shook his head slowly. If you fight, you must fight with more than anger. Michael's fists trembled, his mind a storm. He said, Then show me. The night carried their words away, but in the silence that followed, Michael felt his first steps toward strength. Thomas guided Michael through the yard, their footsteps echoing against rusted metal. Thomas said, You must control rage, not let it control you. Michael's breath was heavy, eyes fixed on every gesture. They stopped near broken crates, where Thomas slammed his fist down. Power isn't in force, Thomas said. It's in timing and clarity. Michael nodded, sweat on his brow though the night was cold. He whispered, I've lived in chaos too long. Thomas studied him with hardened eyes. Then, let this chaos become your fuel. The wind rattled the metal around them, echoing their resolve. Michael trained under Thomas's watch, fists striking old punching bags hung from rusted beams. Each blow echoed like thunder in the empty yard. Thomas said, Your strength must be sharpened, not wasted. Michael's arms ached, but his eyes blazed with fury and determination. He gasped, I'll break him, Thomas. The older man stepped closer, eyes sharp. Break him with precision, not madness. Sweat poured from Michael's brow, but he pushed harder, striking until his knuckles bled. He whispered, This pain is nothing. The sound of chains clinking in the wind marked his vow. Hours later, Michael sat exhausted, knuckles raw, chest rising heavily. Thomas handed him a flask, saying, "Strength without discipline destroys you faster than your enemies." Michael took a sip, tasting metal and smoke. He whispered, "I don't fear destruction, I fear being forgotten." Thomas's expression softened briefly, old pain flickering in his gaze. "Then leave a mark worth remembering," he said. Michael clenched his fists, his voice steady. "Richard will remember me." The yard was silent, but alive with unseen energy. A new fire burned in Michael's eyes, not just rage, but purpose forged by pain and guidance. Michael walked through the narrow alley near the docks, the air thick with salt and oil. He muttered, "Every step pulls me deeper into this fight." His voice was quiet, but his eyes carried fire. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed behind him. A figure emerged, tall and imposing, carrying menace in every stride. "Victor, 38-year-old male," Richard's enforcer said. "You should have stayed broken, Michael." His voice was gravel, laced with cruelty. Michael stiffened, fists tightening, heart pounding but not faltering. Michael said, "You serve a coward, Victor." The man smirked, cracking his knuckles. "I serve the winning side." Michael braced himself, knowing the storm had just grown teeth. Victor circled Michael like a predator, his boots echoing on wet pavement. He said, "Richard told me to teach you what fear feels like." Michael's jaw tightened, his stance shifting. Michael whispered, "Fear is all I've ever known." Victor laughed, the sound sharp as knives. "Then this will feel familiar." He lunged forward, fist swinging like a hammer. Michael ducked, the strike grazing his shoulder, pain jolting his body. Thomas's voice echoed in his mind, "Control rage, not let it control you." Michael steadied himself, breathing through the pain. He said, "You'll learn I'm not the same man." Victor's eyes narrowed, sensing resistance he hadn't expected. Michael staggered back, chest heaving, blood on his lip. Victor advanced, expression cold. "You're weaker than he said," Victor growled. Michael spat blood, whispering, "He underestimated me, just like you." The enforcer sneered, swinging again, but Michael sidestepped, landing a strike against Victor's ribs. Pain flashed across Victor's face, the first crack in his armor. He growled, "Lucky hit." Michael steadied his trembling hands, Thomas's lessons flashing in his mind. He whispered, "Not luck. Control." The air filled with the sounds of fists, rain, and rage. Each blow carried more than anger, it carried years of survival. Victor slammed Michael into a wall, bricks cracking under impact. Michael groaned, pain ripping through him, but his eyes stayed locked on Victor's. Victor hissed, "You're nothing but dirt." Michael gasped, struggling to stand, whispering, "Then dirt will bury you." Rage fueled his muscles as he twisted free, striking with every ounce of precision Thomas had drilled into him. Victor stumbled, surprise flickering in his eyes. The giant was no longer invincible. Michael whispered, "Even giants fall." The alley crackled with tension, every strike echoing louder than the storm. Breathless, both men stood battered, rain streaking across their faces. Victor's lip bled, his arrogance shaken. Michael's chest rose and fell like a war drum. Victor snarled, "This isn't over." Michael's gaze burned through the darkness. He said, "Tell Richard I'm coming." The enforcer hesitated, then stepped back into the shadows, retreating into the night. Michael leaned against the wall, trembling but alive, his spirit unbroken. He whispered, "This city will see me rise." The rain poured heavier as though sealing his vow with thunder's approval. Michael returned to Thomas, bruised but alive, the taste of rain and blood still on his tongue. Thomas studied him in silence before saying, "Victor didn't kill you. That means Richard is worried." Michael smirked faintly, the pain in his ribs proof of survival. He said, "He'll regret not finishing me." Thomas's gaze darkened, his voice sharp. "Be careful what you ask for. Richard plays games you don't see." Michael frowned, sensing something unsaid. Thomas whispered, "He wasn't always your enemy." Michael froze, a chill slicing through him. What do you mean? Thomas turned away, the weight of old secrets pressing between them. Thomas leaned against the rusted beam, his voice heavy with regret. Years ago I worked with Richard. Michael's breath caught, his hands curling into fists. He said, "You trained me while standing in his shadow." Thomas's eyes dropped. I believed his lies once. I thought he fought for justice. Michael's chest tightened as betrayal burned hotter. You knew him, Michael whispered. You knew him when he destroyed my life. Thomas looked up, scars etched deeper by guilt. Yes, and I did nothing. That's my sin. The words cracked the silence like thunder, leaving Michael torn between rage and trust. Michael's voice broke, trembling with fury. You trained me to face him while hiding that you once stood beside him. Thomas's voice was low, pained. I trained you because I see myself in you. I want you to succeed where I failed. Michael stepped closer, eyes locked. Did you help him destroy my family? Thomas's jaw tightened, silence heavy with confession. Michael's heart hammered, the weight of truth crushing him. Thomas whispered, yes, not by choice, but I was there. And I never stopped it. Michael staggered back, breath sharp as glass. His world shattered again. Michael's fists shook violently, torn between striking Thomas and collapsing. He whispered, you were part of my ruin. Thomas raised his hands slowly, not in defense but surrender. Yes, and that's why I'm here. To help you finish what I couldn't. Michael's eyes filled with fire, tears threatening but never falling. He said, you should have died with him. Thomas's voice cracked. Perhaps I already did. The silence between them felt like a graveyard. Michael turned away, whispering, then you'll atone through me. The vow hung in the cold night like a blade. Michael stood at the edge of the yard, staring into the city lights beyond. His voice was steady, cold. Richard ruined me, but he will pay. And you, Thomas, will witness it. Thomas stepped beside him, gaze weary. Then let me guide you one last time, so you don't drown in the same fire. Michael's lips curled in grim resolve. I'll take your guidance, but not your forgiveness. The city loomed before them, glowing like a battlefield. The revelation had scarred him, but it also carved his path clearer. He whispered, the war begins now. Michael stood before Richard's tower, rain pelting down, neon lights shimmering across puddles like blood. He whispered, this is where it ends. His fists clenched, chest burning with fury and purpose. Thomas's words echoed faintly, but they were drowned by his own vow. The glass doors loomed ahead, guarded by shadows. Michael stepped forward, each stride a declaration. The city roared in the distance, oblivious to the war about to ignite. Inside, Richard sipped whiskey, unaware of the storm walking through his doors. Michael said, tonight, I claim what was stolen. His eyes burned brighter than the lights around him. Michael pushed through the doors, soaked clothes dripping across polished marble. Guards stepped forward, but he moved like a man possessed. One guard growled, you don't belong here. Michael's voice was steel. I belong everywhere Richard stands. A brawl erupted, fists and fury echoing through the lobby. Michael ducked, struck, endured every blow, but his rage gave him strength. Blood marked the floor, but he stood unbroken. The guards hesitated, sensing he was more than one man. Michael said, tell him I'm coming. His chest heaved, eyes fierce, as he stepped toward the golden elevator. The elevator doors opened to the top floor, revealing Richard's office bathed in city light. Richard, 35-year-old male, turned slowly, glass in hand. His smirk cut the silence. You actually made it. Michael stepped forward, bloodied but resolute. Your laughter ends tonight. Richard chuckled, swirling whiskey. You think you're stronger now? You're still the boy begging in the dirt. Michael's voice trembled with fury. That boy died in the rain you left me in. Their eyes locked, two storms colliding above the city. Richard whispered, Then let's bury what's left of him. Richard slammed the glass down, stepping forward like a predator. You will never touch what I built. Michael clenched his fists, chest heaving. You built it on ashes of people like me. Richard lunged, their fists colliding with thunderous force. The office erupted into chaos, glass shattering, furniture splintering. Michael roared, each strike carrying years of buried agony. Richard countered with ruthless precision, his polished facade cracking with each blow. Sweat, blood, and vengeance filled the air. Michael whispered between strikes, "Every scar leads me here." Richard snarled, "You'll leave broken again." Michael staggered but refused to fall, his eyes blazing with unyielding fire. Richard's suit was torn, blood on his lip, arrogance slipping away. Michael said, "This is for every time you laugh." His fist struck with brutal force, sending Richard crashing against the glass. The skyline loomed behind him, the city watching their war. Richard gasped, defiance flickering but fading. Michael's breath shook, but his voice was steady. "You'll remember me, even in your fall." Silence hung, broken only by the sound of shattered glass at their feet. The climax had arrived, and the night held its breath. Richard slumped against the shattered glass, his suit soaked in blood, arrogance slipping into weakness. His breathing was shallow, each inhale dragging like broken glass. Michael stood tall above him, battered but unbroken, fists trembling from exhaustion. Richard smirked faintly, whispering, "You think this victory makes you better than me?" Michael's eyes blazed with fury and clarity. He said, "No, it makes me free." Thunder cracked, lightning flashing through the skyline, casting shadows across their bruised faces. Richard spat blood, his laughter fragile, echoing like the ghost of a man who once believed he was untouchable. Michael's grip tightened around his own rage, torn between vengeance and restraint. He whispered to himself, "Tonight ends the laughter." Every scar and humiliation converged into this moment, his past and future colliding in the rain-soaked silence. The city seemed to lean closer, as though waiting for his final choice. Michael seized Richard by the collar, lifting him with sheer fury. Richard's face twisted, fear flickering where arrogance once ruled. Michael snarled, "Do you feel it now? The fear you carved into me." Richard coughed, blood smearing his lips as he rasped, "You're no different from me." Michael's voice cracked with anger, yet carried defiance. "I'll never be you." He slammed Richard into the fractured glass, the skyline's light splitting into shards across the room. Richard wheezed, struggling against the grip of the man he once mocked. The storm outside wailed, thunder echoing their chaos. Michael's knuckles ached, his chest burned, but his heart carried the fire of every scar he bore. His hand shook violently, torn between unleashing vengeance and rising above it. Richard's smirk returned faintly, his voice a whisper of poison. "Weak, bite, and..." Michael's eyes narrowed, his breath steadying as choice carved itself in stone. The office doors burst open as Thomas entered, coat dripping rain, eyes heavy with sorrow. His voice was steady but sharp. "Michael, stop. End this the right way." Michael's jaw tightened, his fist still gripping Richard's collar. He whispered, "He deserves worse than death." Thomas's steps echoed through broken glass as he came closer. "Listen to me. If you kill him, he wins. He broke you once. If you let rage define you, he breaks you again." Michael's chest heaved, torn between fire and reason. Richard coughed, sneering faintly, his words dripping venom. "He's right, Michael. You'll never escape me." Michael's eyes flickered, seeing the twisted reflection of himself in Richard's grin. Thomas's scarred face carried both command and regret. "Be stronger than us both. Walk away with your soul intact." The storm outside thundered, demanding a choice. Michael's hand shook, rage colliding with clarity, vengeance against restraint. Michael's breath trembled as he released Richard, letting him collapse onto the shattered floor. Richard groaned, coughing weakly, his body finally betraying his arrogance. Michael whispered, "I won't bury myself with you." His voice was sharp, his chest rising with liberation. Thomas's eyes softened, a subtle nod of approval breaking his sternness. Richard laughed faintly through broken lips, his voice cracked. "You'll regret this. You're too weak to finish me." Michael turned, blood dripping from his knuckles, his steps slow but resolute. He glanced back only once, his voice cutting like steel. "No, Richard, you'll regret that I let you live." Silence consumed the wrecked office, the storm outside matching the aftermath of the war. Michael's footsteps echoed like drums of victory and survival. Richard lay broken, not just in body but in pride. For the first time, fear replaced laughter in his hollow eyes. Michael stepped into the storm, neon lights flickering across the rain-slick streets below. Each droplet struck him like memory, but none broke him anymore. He whispered, "This is my reckoning." Lightning lit his bruised face, showing strength carved from scars. Thomas's voice followed faintly from the doorway. "You chose life over ashes." Michael didn't answer, his silence a declaration of power. The city stretched before him, vast and indifferent, yet no longer a prison. He carried its scars and its fury, but also its fire. His reflection in the wet pavement showed not the broken man Richard once mocked, but the man who survived him. Michael closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with fierce resolve. The war was over, but the scars remained as armor. His voice carried into the storm like thunder. "The man who laughed will never laugh again."